Good evening, all of you. In the last session, we completed S3 buckets and Route 53. In last session, we completed S3 buckets and Route 53 services. Today, we are going to start with a new service in the AWS, which is called RDS. Today's session, we are going to talk about a new service called RDS. RDS stands for Relational Database Management System. Relational Database Management System. Now, for every application, database is mandatory. Nowadays, for every application, database is mandatory. Now, if we take a web application, every web application contains three parts. Every web application contains three parts, guys. First one is called as front end of the application. Which is also called as user interface. Second one is called as back end of the application. Where business logic will be available. Third one is called as database, which is called as persistent store. If we take any application, that application can be divided into three parts. First one is front end of the application. Second one is back end of the application. Third one is database of the application. Right. Front end will deal with user interface. Now, if you see here, this is front end of the application, and this is back end of the application, and this is database of the application. Front end, where we can see the web pages. Front end of the application, user interface will be available. Here we will have back end of the application, and here we will have database for the application. End users are going to communicate with front end of the application. That is called user interface. We all are users who are accessing the application. Now, you are accessing Facebook. You have registered in the Facebook. You created your account in the Facebook, and you are storing your data. You are uploading your images. You are uploading Facebook statuses. You are uploading stories in the Facebook. Like that, several operations we are doing. Front end contains user interface of the application where users can perform operations. Front end means user interface of the application. Back end user interface of the application, that means end user will use this. End user will use this to perform operations like login, registration, example. What kind of operations users will perform in our application? Login, register, search, etc. All these operations they are going to perform by using front end of the application. Backend contains business logic. Backend contains business logic of the application. When a user performs some operations in the front end, business logic will execute in the backend. When user performs some operation, user performs some operation in the front end, perform operation in the front end, then backend business logic will execute. End user cannot see the backend logic. End user cannot see backend logic. End user cannot see backend of application. Now you can just perform the operations. You can just perform the operations on the application, but you cannot see backend. End user can see front end. We are seeing the front end. We are clicking on the login button. We are clicking on the registration button. End user can see the front end. End user can see front end of application. Whereas end user cannot see the back end of the application. End user can see front end of the application, but end user cannot see the back end of the application. Are you guys able to understand? If you take any application, that application contains three parts. One is called front end of the application. Second one is called back end of the application. Third one is called as database. Database nothing but persistent store. Now, end user means he will interact with our application by accessing the front end. When user performs some operation in the front end, then backend logic will execute. Backend logic will execute. User can see the front end, but the user cannot see the backend of the application. Now, our application need to store the user's data. For that, we need a database. When users are accessing our application, we should store users data. We should store users data for verification and validation. When users are accessing our application, we should store users data. To store the data of our application, we should store users data and users activities. Users data and users activities. To store the users data, we will use database. We will use database. Database used for storing the data. Now, guys, see, if you go for our Ashok IT website, can you see user interface of our website? Can you see the user interface of our website? Banners are displaying, menu is available, login button available, dashboard button is available. When you go to the dashboard button, the course images are displaying. When you go to my courses, some courses are coming. When I click on this Linux course, some course notes is coming. That means, are we storing all this data or not? Are we storing all this data in our application or not? In order to store all this, now see, when you click on training schedules, the timetable is coming. When the which course is going to start, the timetable is coming. So here, can you see that the data is stored in our application, from where the training schedule is coming, from where these interview questions are coming, okay, from where these course names are coming, from where this course content is coming, all this information is stored in the database. All this information is stored in the database. End users cannot see the database. End users cannot see database of our application. End user cannot see database of our application, but every application will use the database, or applications will not use the database. Can you imagine a project without storing the data? Can you imagine a project without storing the data? Can you imagine a project without storing the data? We cannot imagine a project without storing the data. Now, I have opened Ashok IT website. Now see here, when I go to dashboard page, some courses are coming. When I go to my courses, course names are coming. When I go to particular course, that course notes is coming. That means somewhere the data is stored and the data is displaying. When I click on Linux is a free course. Okay. Now when I go to my courses, Linux is coming. When I click on Linux data is coming. Linux course class notes is coming. Zoom link coming. Telegram link coming. Course status coming. That means, can I say this all is user interface of my application? Can I say this is user interface of my application? Now, When I click on that button, backend logic is executing and it is coming. Some data is stored in the database. When I click on online training schedules, now can you see the courses timetable is coming? Courses timetable is coming. That means somewhere this data is stored and the data is coming. Somewhere the data is stored and the data is coming here. That means my application is having a database or not. My application is having a database or not. Come on, guys. My application is having a database or not. Now, can you imagine any application without a database? Can you imagine any application without a database? No, you can't imagine any application without database. Now, every application is divided into three parts, guys. One is called as front end of the application. Second one is called back end of the application. Third one is called database. Front end nothing but user interface where users are going to interact with application. Where users are going to interact with our application. Now, backend means where the business logic will execute. When users perform some operation on the front end, then backend logic is going to execute. Then what is this database? Database used to store the data. Database is used to store the data. So for every application, database is required to store the data. For every application, database is required to store the data. For every application, database is required to store and retrieve the data. For every application, database is required to store and retrieve the data. If you don't have the database, then our application cannot store the data. Now, if we want to set up the database, there are so many challenges are available. If we want to set up the database, there are so many challenges are available. For every application, database is required to store and retrieve the data. Generally, we can see two types of databases in the market. Generally, we can see two types of databases in the market which are having lot of demand. First one is SQL databases and second one is NoSQL databases, or we can say relational databases, and the second one is NoSQL databases. What type of databases we can see in the market, guys? Two types of databases we can see in the market. First one is called relational databases. Second one is called NoSQL databases. Now, the example for relational databases, the example for relational databases are Oracle database, MySQL database. The example for relational is Oracle database, MySQL database, Postgres database, PostgreSQL database are examples. PostgreSQL databases are examples. Coming to NoSQL databases, MongoDB, Couchbase, HBase, Cassandra, DynamoDB, etc. These all databases are comes under NoSQL databases. NoSQL databases. Are you guys able to understand what is a database and what is the purpose of database? Are you guys able to understand what is a database and what is the purpose of the database? And how many types of databases we have? There are two types of databases we have. First one is relational database and the second one is NoSQL database. Relational databases are used to represent structured data. Relational databases are used to represent structured data. structured data, like data having clear boundaries. Relational databases are used to represent structured data, like data having clear boundaries, where the data having clear boundaries, like this. Now id name email, like this. Now id1 name is Raju, email raju@gmail.com. Second one, rani@gmail.com. rani@gmail.com. So like this, where the data is having clear boundaries, such kind of data is called as structured data. Now, some Mahesh. Okay. Now let me go with mahesh@gmail.com. Now here I'm going to take this data in the form of a table. So this is called as students data. I'm going to call this data as a students data. When you have data like this, then you can go for relational databases, guys. For every application, database is required to store and retrieve the data. Generally, we can see two types of databases in the market which are having a lot of demand. First one is relational database. Second one is NoSQL database. Which databases comes under relational database? Oracle database comes under relational database. MySQL database comes under relational database. Postgres SQL database comes under relational database. What are the NoSQL databases available? MongoDB, Couchbase, HBase, Cassandra, DynamoDB. All these databases comes under NoSQL databases. Okay. Relational databases are used to represent structured data where the data having clear boundaries. In relational databases, we will store the data in the form of tables and columns. In relational databases, we will store the data in the form of tables and columns. In the relational databases, we will store the data in the form of tables and columns. Multiple tables will be available. Every table will have a columns. Every table will have the columns. Now you see, if you take this data, ID is one column, name is one column, email is one column. Now inside this, Raju record is one row, Rani record is one row, Mahesh record is one row. So do we have clear definitions of the data? ID 1, name Raju, email ID raju@gmail.com. ID 2, name Rani, email rani@gmail.com. ID 3, name Mahesh, email mahesh@gmail.com. Can we say that the data is very clear in the form of rows and columns? Can we say that the data is very clear in the form of rows and columns? The data is very clear in the form of rows and columns. That is called structured data. In order to represent this kind of structured data, we are going for relational databases in our project. What kind of databases that we are going to use, guys? We are going to use what kind of databases now? We are going to use relational databases in our project. What are the relational databases available? Oracle is available, MySQL is available, PostgreSQL is available. Oracle from Oracle company, MySQL is community database. It is also under license of the Oracle. PostgreSQL, like this, there are several relational databases are available. Now, here there is a concept of NoSQL database also. I will come to that point later, guys. What is that MongoDB? What is that Cassandra? What is that DynamoDB? I will tell you what is that Mongo and all. Those comes under NoSQL databases. First, we are going to understand SQL databases. Are you guys getting the clarity? What is a SQL database? Are you guys getting the clarity? What is a SQL database? What is the meaning of SQL database? data will have a structure. SQL, structured query language. Structured query language. SQL stands for structured query language, which is used to store the data in the form of tables. A table contains columns and rows. Table contains columns and rows in the form of tables. Table contains rows and columns. It is going to store the data in the form of tables. Tables contains rows and columns. Tables contains rows and columns. And the tables will have relation. In one table, I can have students data. In another table, I can have student address data or student course data. Here, I'm going to take one table, students data, students courses, students data, students courses. In student table, I will take ID, I will take name, I will take a phone number. ID, name, phone number. Okay. Now, in the student courses, I will take ID, then I will take a student ID, then I will take a course. I will take a course. Here, let me keep it as a SID. That means it is a student ID. Now, student ID 1, name, Raju, phone number, some value. Similarly, Rani, some phone number. Okay. Now 3. Now let me take it as some Gani. Now like this, I'm having some mobile number. Now here ID, I'm taking it as 100. Student ID 1. This is student joined for Java. Now ID 101. The student ID is 2. It is Java. Same student joined for one more course. Called DevOps course. Okay. Now 103 ID, third user. He joined for Python. Now, if you look at the table, can you understand who are the students and they joined for which courses now? Do you have any relation here in the tables? Do we have any relation in the tables here, guys? The tables are having a relation. The data is very clearly defined in the form of tables. Every table contains row and column. Every table contains rows and columns. Are you guys clear with my point? Come on. This is a table which contains the data in the form of rows and columns. It is a database which contains the tables and rows in the table. Table represents the data. So if your data is representing in the tables like this, can we call this data as a structured data? My data is a structured data or my data is a unstructured data? Guys, my data is a structured data or my data is a unstructured data? Come on, structured data. So if your project is getting structured data, then what type of database we need to use? Do we need to use relational database or we need to go for NoSQL database? We need to go for relational database. That is called RDBMS, Relational Database Management System. If your project wants to deal with this kind of data, then we need to go for relational databases. That is called RDS, Relational Database Management System. Okay. Earlier, companies used to purchase the databases and they used to maintain. Earlier, companies used to purchase databases. What are the challenges if you purchase a database? What are the challenges? What are the challenges? Purchase the database license, purchase DB license, set up database server, set up a machine to install the database server. Because database server you have to purchase the DB's license, set up a machine, to install DB server, set up DB server, set up DB server, set up network, set up power, set up network, set up power, set up network, set up power, set up AC, secure database server system, set up security for DB server machine. Okay, set up cluster, set up load balancer for a database, set up backups, set up data backup system, set up data backups for DB, blah blah. Who will take care of all these things? If you earlier companies used to purchase the database. If you purchase the database, then what is the problem? If you purchase the database, then what is the problem? Guys, if you purchase the database, then what is the problem? Come on. It is expensive or not? It is expensive or not? You need to purchase the database license. You need to take a computer to install the database. You need to set up the database server. You need to set up the network. You need to set up the power, air conditioners. You need to set up the security for that system. You need to set up the load balancer. You need to set up the data backups for these databases. Go for RDS, then Amazon will take care of all these things. If we go for Amazon RDS, then Amazon AWS will take care of all these things. If we go for AWS RDS service, then Amazon will take care of all these things. Then Amazon will take care of all these things. If we go for AWS RDS service, then Amazon will take care of all these things. Will take care of all these things. Just create a database and use it. Just create a database and use it. You just create a database and use it for project. Use it for project. Remaining stuff AWS will take care. How beautiful it is. Guys, how beautiful it is. Do you need to spend your money and time to set up a database for your project? Do you need to spend your time and money to use the database? Then what we need to do? Everything is ready-made. Everything is ready-made. You just go to the database. You just go to the AWS. You create a database. AWS will give you the database. Then your application can connect to the AWS database. Your application can connect to the AWS database. Now, here we are going to take RDS service in the AWS. What service we are going to take, guys? AWS RDS. AWS RDS. That means database. What database you want, you set up in the AWS RDS. Now, you take your application can connect to AWS RDS. You no need to do anything. Just your application can connect to AWS RDS. Who will take care of the database licenses? Who will take care of the security? Who will take care of the backup? Who will take care of the network? Who will take care of the power? AWS. You just pay the money, use it. Ready-made service is available for you to use the databases in your application. That is called RDS service in the AWS. What is that service name called, guys? RDS service in the AWS. RDS stands for Relational Database Management System. Relational Database Management System. Every web application contains three parts: front end of the application, back end of the application, database of the application. Front end will deal with the user interface where users can access our application, and back end will contain the logic. When a user performs some operation, then our backend logic is going to execute. What our backend logic will do? Backend logic is going to communicate with the database to store the data, to update the data, to delete the data, to retrieve the data. Are you getting my point? Are you getting my point? I can store the data. My application will store the data. My application will retrieve the data. My application will update the data. My application will delete the data. Where is that data? Where is that data? Data is there in the database. So for every application, database is required or a database is not required. Let's take a simple example. For Ashok IT website, data is required or data is not required. I'm uploading the class notes. Who can download that class notes? The people who joined for that course, they can download the class notes. Ashok IT website displaying the training schedules. That means it is displaying the data. Ashok IT is displaying the banners. That means it is displaying the data. Ashok IT is displaying the interview questions. That means it is displaying the data. Where is that data? Where is that data, man? The data is there in the database. The data is there in the database. Now, can you imagine any application without database? Facebook, WhatsApp, Gmail, Twitter, Instagram, IRCTC, Make My Trip, Abibus, Redbus, RTC. Every project needs a database. Every project needs a database. Right. Database is nothing but persistent store where we are going to store the data. Now, how many types of databases we can see mainly in the market, guys? There are several types of databases available, but I'm talking about mainly two types of databases. What are the two types of databases, guys? What are the two types of databases we have? First one is relational database. Second one is NoSQL database. First one is a relational database and the second one is a NoSQL database. When to go for relational databases? When to go for relational databases? Bhaiya, can you tell me? Can you tell me when to go for relational databases? When your data is having some structure, you have a very clear boundaries of the data. You have very clear boundaries of the data. When your data is very structured data, when your data is having a clear boundaries, then you can go for structured databases, that is called SQL databases, structured query language databases. What are the SQL databases available in the market? Oracle, MySQL, PostgreSQL, these all are called as SQL databases. In these databases, we will store the data in the form of tables. Tables will have a columns. One table will have a relation with the other tables. One table will have a relation with other table. And next one, NoSQL. NoSQL databases are used to store unstructured data. We will talk about the NoSQL databases. There are several NoSQL databases also available in the market like MongoDB, Couchbase, HBase, Cassandra, DynamoDB. All these are NoSQL databases. Forget about the NoSQL databases for time being. Let's concentrate on the relational databases. Relational databases are used to represent structured data where data having clear boundaries, ID, name, email. In relational databases, we'll store the data in the form of tables. Tables contains rows and columns. In relational databases, we'll store the data in the form of tables. Tables contains rows and columns. Okay. Now, earlier, companies used to purchase database. If you purchase the database, you need to purchase the license of the database. You need a computer to install the database. You need to set up the server. You need to set up the network. You need to set up the power, set up the AC, set up the security, set up the load balancer, set up the data backup, recruit the DB administrators, recruit DBAs, recruit, because can you do everything with the database? Recruit DBA. DBA nothing but database administrator. Recruit DBA, database administrator. Lot of monitor the databases continuously. Monitor the database. Recruit the DBA, then monitor DBs, monitor database. All these things you need to take care manually. You need to spend a lot of time. You need to spend a lot of money also if you want to set up the database in your system, right? If you go for AWS RDS service, then Amazon will take care of all these things. You just create a database and use it for project. Use it for project. Remaining stuff AWS will take care. So just pay the money and use it. AWS RDS, you create the database, you connect from your application to your database. You connect your application with your database. Then who will manage the databases, database backups, database securities and everything? AWS will manage. Now, can we create a database and can we connect to the database, guys? Can we create a database and can we connect to the database now? Can we create RDS now? Guys, come on. Perfect. Go to AWS now. Go to AWS now. Which service we need to use now? Which service we need to use now? What is the service we need to use now? RDS. Let's go and type RDS. Managed Relational Database Service. Relational Database Service, RDS. I want to create a database and I want to connect with the database. I want to create the database and I want to connect to the database. Guys, as a DevOps engineer, your responsibility is creating the database and providing the database credentials to the development team. That's it. They will connect and they will perform the operations. So what is our duty as a DevOps engineers? Creating the database, sharing the database credentials with the team members. That's it. Now, databases. Do we have any databases here? Do we have any database here? We don't have any database. We don't have any database. Can we connect to that? Can we create a database now? Click on create database. Create database. Amazon is supporting for only one database or Amazon supporting for multiple databases now? Amazon supporting for one database or Amazon supporting for multiple databases? Amazon supporting for multiple databases. Create a database. Choose a database creation method. Standard create, easy create. I'm going for standard create. Standard create. Database engine. Which one you want to use? Do you want to use Amazon Aurora? Do you want to use MySQL? Do you want to use MariaDB? Do you want to use PostgreSQL, Oracle, SQL Server? These all are relational databases, nothing but SQL databases. I'm going for MySQL. Which database I'm using, guys? MySQL database I'm using. MySQL Community. MySQL Community Edition. Now, version of the MySQL, very good. Do you want to use this MySQL for production? That means for real application or for your development activity? Or do you want to go for a free tier? Let's go with free tier. Tomorrow when we are working in the company, then we will choose a production. That means if you want to use that in the real project, then go for production. If you are using for development for testing activities in the project, go for a second option. But we are using it for free tier. Use it as a free tier. Settings. Database instance identifier. It is asking me to give the some identifier now. I'm giving it as Ashok IT DB. Ashok IT DB. Now, for this database, it is asking to choose some username. By default, admin is coming. You can choose the password. If you don't want to choose the password, select this option. It is going to auto generate the password. I will give my password, my database password. My database password. Okay, confirm that password. I have confirmed the password. DB instance details, T3.micro. Okay, fine. Storage is general purpose. Allocated storage is there. Allocated storage is available. enable storage auto scaling, okay, availability and durability, connectivity, public access. So public, our application should access this. Let's give the public access for the database. Public access, security group, default security group I am using. Availability zone, no preference. Additional configuration, database port number is 3306. Database authentication, password authentication. Additional configuration, database name. Let me give the database name as Ashok IT DB. Any name you can give. I'm giving the database name as Ashok IT DB. Enable automated backups. When you want to take the data backup, 7 days, if 7 days, every day you want to take the backup, or 7 days you want to take the backup window, select the backup window, start time, end time, when exactly you want to take the data backup, that also you can specify. Encryption using AWS key management service console, data encryption we can do. Keys are there. Enable enhanced monitoring, data log exports, what you want to do with that. Auto monitor, no preference. So many things are available. Now you see monthly cost. Free tier, Amazon RDS free tier is available to you for 12 months. Each calendar month, free tier will allow you to use the RDS resource listed below for free. 750 hours Amazon RDS in single availability zone. 20 GB general purpose storage, 20 GB automated backup storage, and any user initiated DB snapshots. Okay, 1 year free, no problem. Now guys, see the options once again. Choose the database creation method. I'm using it as a standard create. Can I note down these steps? What I am using here? Login into AWS. Login into AWS account. Go to RDS service. Choose create a database option. Select standard create. Select standard creation. Select engine type as MySQL. Select engine type as MySQL because it is free. Engine type as MySQL, it is free. MySQL community. Select template type as free tier. Select sample template to meet your use case. Select template as free tier. Give identifier name. You can give any name for this identifier. Give DB instance identifier name. Give DB instance identifier name as Ashok IT DB. You can give any name for this, guys. It's not mandatory to give only Ashok IT DB. You can give any name. Credentials setting. Default username is admin. If you want, you can change it. Default username is admin. Choose your own password. Choose password and enter confirm password. Enter the password and enter same as confirm password. Enter password and enter same as confirm password. Enter password and enter same as confirm password. Instance class, you no need to do select anything. Use the default VPC group. No need to select anything. Password authentication by default. Additional configuration. Public access will be there. Make the public access as yes. Select the public access as yes. Select public access as yes. Select the public access as yes. Password authentication, no problem. Here somewhere we are entering the database name, guys. I have given that as Ashok IT DB somewhere. Yeah. Under additional settings, enter the initial database name. Under additional configuration, under additional configuration. Under additional configuration, enter database name. Enter database name as Ashok IT. You can enter anything there. Under additional configuration, enter database name as Ashok IT. You can enter anything there. Backup windows will be available by default. Log exports, no need to change anything else. Click on create database. Database is getting created. Database is creating. Guys, creating database Ashok IT DB. Your database might take a few minutes to launch. Your database might take a few minutes to launch. Now, can you see the database is getting created now? Here, view credential details. You can see credentials of the database, username and password. Okay. You can see credentials of the database. So what we need to note down? Click on create database. What is the step here? Click on create database. It will take few minutes. It will take few minutes to launch our database. It will take few minutes to launch our database. Click on create database. It will take few minutes to launch our database. Once the date, note down, once the database is launched, once the database is launched, once DB launched, it will generate endpoint for our DB to connect. Once DB launched, it will generate endpoint to connect our database. By using DB endpoint, username and password and port number, we can connect to our database. To connect with the database, we need below details. To connect with the database, we need below details. First one is DB endpoint, DB port number for MySQL default 3306. Okay, DB username, DB password, DB username and DB password. So these details we need to note down. Tomorrow, as a DevOps engineer or as a AWS engineer, you need to share these details with the development team. That's it. Your duty, creating the database, sharing these details with the development team. Then they will use these details to connect to the database from the application. Application should connect to the database, right? To connect with the database, what the details they need? They need the endpoint of the DB. They need the port number of the DB. They need the username and they need the password. Using these details, developers will connect with the database through application. Using these details, developers will connect with the DB to perform operations. Samjhe? Now, I think our database might got created. Still, it is getting created. Once the database is created, you can see that endpoint will be generated. Once the database is created, endpoint will be generated. Okay, guys, endpoint will be generated once the database got created. Meanwhile, can we launch our EC2 instance to connect to the database from EC2? Can we check from our EC2? Are we able to connect with the database? Meanwhile, can we go to EC2 and can we check? Are we able to connect with the database? Let's go to our EC2 instances. Instance is stopped. Instance state, start the instance. In the EC2, I will install the MySQL client and I will connect to that database from the EC2. Then later I will tell you how to connect to the database from outside also. All right, guys. Using these details, we can connect with the DB to perform operations. Connecting to MySQL database using EC2 instance. Connecting with MySQL DB, connecting with AWS RDS MySQL DB using EC2 instance. I will show you how can we connect with AWS RDS using EC2 instance. All right, guys, you need to note down default username is admin, enter the password and enter the same as confirm password. Note down the username and password, guys. It is very important. It's very important. Note down username and password to connect with the database. Note down username and password to connect with the database. Let me save this file, guys. It's very important for you for practice. RDS nodes. All right. Connecting to RDS. Fine. My EC2 instance is running. What about our database? Click on the database. Oh, can you see now endpoint is generated? Can you see now endpoint is generated for the database now? Endpoint is generated for the database or not? What is the endpoint? Nothing but database URL. Endpoint means database URL, database endpoint. That means DB URL. Now I have the DB URL, port number I know the username and I know the password. If I have these details, can we connect to the database to perform the operations? Can we connect to the database to perform the operations now? So tomorrow, what you will do, you will give these details to development team. We will give the database details to development team. Okay. Now, let me open my putty. So that I can connect to this EC2 and I will show you, am I able to connect with this RDS database or not? Putty, open putty, copy the IP, SSH, auth, browse, PPK file, appearance, change, bold, open, accept, login as Ubuntu. This is my Ubuntu machine. Now I want to execute commands to install MySQL client and I want to connect to the database. Here, these are the commands that you need to execute, guys. First one, update the existing package in the Ubuntu machine. Let's update the packages. Sudo apt update. I'm updating existing packages. Okay. Launch EC2 instance. Connect to EC2 using putty. Connect to EC2 instance using putty. Here I'm using Ubuntu OS. Connect to EC2 instance using putty. Execute below commands. Execute below commands. Clear, guys? Fine. Updating is done. Then what next? Install MySQL client software. We need a client to install to connect for that. Now I'm installing MySQL client in my machine. MySQL is installed successfully. Now to connect to the database, we need to use this command. MySQL -h means endpoint, host, database host URL, -u username, -p password. Password you no need to give here. It will ask you to enter the password. This is the command we need to execute. Now example, what I will do is I will give my command. My username is admin. My username is admin. My password, I go to RDS endpoint URL. Copy this endpoint. Copy this endpoint. All right. This is my database URL. This is my username. Password I am not giving here. It will ask the password. It will ask password. Enter that password. It will ask when we execute the above command. When we execute above command, it will ask password. Then enter correct password and click enter. And click enter. Now, can you see the steps? How to connect with the RDS database using EC2 instance? Launch EC2, connect to EC2 using putty, then execute the below commands. Sudo apt get update. What is the purpose of this command? It is used to update the existing packages of our application. Then sudo apt get install MySQL client. It is used to install MySQL client software in the Ubuntu machine. Then to connect from our EC2 to the MySQL database, this is the command. -h represents host URL endpoint of your database. -u represents what is the username of your database, that is admin by default. -p represents password. Now this is my command. Chalo, let's take this command, copy, go to this putty terminal, paste it, execute. It is asking my password. I will give my password. I have given my password. Welcome to MySQL monitor commands end with this one. Now, am I able to connect with my MySQL database? Now, here you can execute a command, show databases. Show databases, sorry. Now, what are the databases available? Ashok IT DB is available. Now, what I can do? Use Ashok IT DB. I'm using that database. Now, show tables. Do you have any tables in the database? No tables are available. Create table emp details. I will give emp underscore id as a integer, comma, emp underscore name as a varchar, comma, emp underscore salary as a integer. This is the syntax to create a table. This is a syntax to create the table. You have an error. MySQL version for the right syntax near emp salary as a integer. Yeah, we can execute these kind of commands to create the tables. You can simply see table creation in MySQL. Creates table creation in MySQL. Table creation in MySQL. Okay, create a table, table name, column names like this we can take. Now, create table, table name, persons table, int. Oh, sorry, I have given integer. That's why it is not taking. Integer is a Java data type. In the MySQL, we should give int data type. Let me take this table. Create table persons ID int, varchar, first name, last name, something like this. You can copy this command. You can execute it. Now, query affected, show tables. Now, there is a table created with a name called persons. Now we can insert the data into the table. How can we insert? Insert into persons values, person ID 101, last name IT, first name Ashok, address HYD, city is also HYD. Now one record is inserted. Select star from persons. Can you see that I am able to insert the record in the table? Can you see that I'm able to insert a record in the table? Yeah. So this is the query to insert that record. Now, this is the query to check whether record is inserted or not. Okay. Table creation. SQL query to create the table. SQL query to create table. SQL query to insert the record into table. SQL query to insert record into table. SQL query to see the table data. SQL query to see table data. Now here SQL, once you are connected to the database, once connected to database, we can see list of databases available by executing which command? Show databases. Show databases. Select the database to use. Select database to use. How can we use the database? Use database name. My database name is Ashok IT. Once the database is selected, then we can create a table, insert data using below. We can create table, insert data, and retrieve data using below command. Guys, I'm going to do everything once again. You just observe. I am closing my putty. Okay. Currently, I'm in the putty. Terminal. Observe carefully what I'm going to do to connect with MySQL database. Can you see this? Can you see my screen? Can I repeat the steps once again? Now? Not required, huh? Do I need to repeat or not required? Repeat required, huh? Okay, concentrate. So, are you clear how to create a database in AWS RDS? Are you clear with database creation in the AWS RDS? Database is created. Now, open this database. Can you see endpoint of the database? Guys, credentials you should store secretly, because every time it will not display you the credentials. Whenever you create the database, at that time only you have to store your credentials. Now, so here we have the database endpoint. What is the endpoint? Endpoint is nothing but the database host. We can say it is the URL to connect with the database. Now, I have noted down my endpoint. I know my port number, username, default is admin. If you want, you can change it. Password I have given. I know my password of the database. To connect with the database, we need. Now, first we are creating MySQL database using AWS RDS. Creating MySQL DB using AWS RDS. Relational database service. Log in into AWS, go to RDS, create the database, choose standard creation, choose MySQL, choose free tier, give the database identifier name as Ashok IT DB, username is admin, password, enter your password, whatever you want, then make it as public access so that everybody can connect. Under configuration, enter the database name as Ashok IT. This is the database name that I have given, or I have given as Ashok IT DB. Any name you can give. Once you have given the database name, then click on create database. It will take few minutes to launch our database. Once the DB launched, it will generate endpoint for our DB to connect. Endpoint means database host URL. Note, DB endpoint means the URL to connect with the database. Endpoint means the URL to connect with the database. Are you clear with these steps? How to create a MySQL database? Are you clear with these steps to create MySQL database? Come on. right now. Very good. Once the database is created, what information is required to connect with the database? What information is required to connect with the database? Endpoint URL, port number, username, password. Port number by default 3306. We are not changing anything. Now I have these details. Using these details, you can connect to the database from EC2 or from MySQL Workbench or from Java application also you can connect. From .NET application also you can connect. If you give these details to the developer, developer will connect to the database from the Java program. Any application, whatever they are developing, from the application, they can connect to our database. As a AWS engineer, we need to provide these details to the development team. Then by using these details, they will connect to the database. By using these details, they will connect to the database. Are you clear with my point? Using these details, we can connect with the database to perform operations. Now, how to connect with the database using EC2 instance? Connecting with AWS RDS using EC2 instance. Launch EC2 instance using Ubuntu OS. Connect to EC2 instance using PuTTY. Once you connected, execute below commands in PuTTY. Execute below commands in PuTTY. What is the first command? It is used to update the existing packages. Sudo apt get update. ये क्या करेगा? आपका Linux machine operating system का packages update करेगा. It is going to update the packages in the Linux. Okay, it is for Ubuntu, guys. Now, how to install MySQL client? How to install MySQL client software? I'm going to install the client software by using sudo apt get install MySQL client. I'm installing MySQL client software in our EC2 instance. It's already installed in my machine. Okay, once we have installed the packages, once we have installed MySQL client, then connect to the database using our Ubuntu. How can I connect to the database using Ubuntu? This is the command. You need to provide your endpoint URL here. You need to provide your endpoint URL. You need to provide your username. -p, it will ask for the password. When you enter, it will ask for the password. So this is my endpoint URL, guys. And this is my username. Okay? Let me try to connect with the MySQL database using PuTTY. Chalo. Connect, asking password. I remember my password. Enter. Did I connect to the database? Did I connect to the database or not? Here, some people may get the problem. Some people may not be able to connect to the database at this point. Maybe port number issue. Maybe port number issue. Which port number we need to open in the security group? Which port number we need to open in the security group? 3306. We need to open which port number, guys? 3306. Now, see here. We can see the list of databases. Okay. If once connected to the database, we can see list of databases available. If connection is not established, if you are not able to connect, if you are not able to connect, then check 3306 port is open or not in security group. In security group. If it is not open, then enable 3306 port. Then enable 3306 port. Now see here, what is the default security group I'm getting? VPC security group I'm getting, default security group. Go to database VPC security group, which I have default. Go to the default security group. Can you see my inbound role? Can you see my inbound role? What I configured as a port range? 0255 65535. Now enable that port. In the DB instance, DB in database, select VPC security group, edit inbound rule, add port range as 0 to 65535. All the ports up to 0 to 65535, all the port numbers are going to open. So the people who are not able to connect to that database, you have to do this step. Come on, guys. You have to do this step. Okay, this is very crucial. Most of the people will be stuck here because they will launch the database, but they will not be able to connect. They may not be able to connect because port number issue. How to resolve that port number issue? Go to your database. That is RDS database. Once you go to RDS database, you can see what is the security group available for your database. Open your RDS. In the RDS database, you can see which security group you have configured. We have selected a default security group. Click on the database. Can you see which is security group available here? VPC security group, default security group is available. Default security group is available under connectivity. Go to database, go to connectivity and security. Select VPC security group. Edit inbound rules. Click on that security group ID. Select VPC security group. Click on security group ID. Then edit inbound rules. Select type as all TCP. Add port range as 0 to 65535. Save rules. 65535. Save rules. That's it. Now your port number 3306 is in the range of 65535 port range. You can configure that particular port also. Generally, people will give up to 65535 port. Once it is done, then you will connect to your database. Once the database connected, once connected to database, we can execute. We can see list of databases available using below command. Once connected to database, we can see list of databases available using below command. What is that command? Show databases. Now, what database is available for us? Ashok IT is the database name we have given at the time of creation. Right? The database name is displaying. Once the database, select the database to use. It will display the databases. Select the database to use. Use database name. What is my database name? Ashok IT DB. How to use it? Use Ashok IT DB. Use Ashok IT DB semicolon. Yes, I'm able to change. I change it to that particular database. That means inside the MySQL, we can create multiple databases. For every application, one database you can use. For here, I'm using Ashok IT DB. Once you have chosen the database, once we have chosen the database, see the tables available in the database. Display tables available in the database. Which command we can use to see the tables? Show tables is the command. Guys, basically these commands developers will use. As I'm a developer, I'm feeling very comfortable to use these commands. The people who are from non-IT background, maybe it is difficult for you, but you don't need to know all these things, guys. Your task is up to here. Are you able to create the database? Are you able to share the details? Are you able to connect to check whether database is connecting or not? That's it. All these commands developers will use. but I'm showing you how to execute some queries also. Show the databases, select the database to use database name, show tables. It is going to show all the tables which are available in the database. It is going to show all the tables available in the database. Now, show tables. It is showing the tables. Table name, persons. If the table is not available, then this is the query to create the table. This is the query to insert the data into the table. This is the query to retrieve the data from the table. Select star from persons. I'm able to select star from persons. Oh, capital letter. Persons. Now, I'm able to insert, I'm able to create the table, I'm able to insert the data, and I'm able to retrieve the data. This I have done through my putty. In the real time, what people will do, from application, they will connect to the database to perform the operations. From the application, they will connect to the database to perform the operations. Are you guys clear with this? Can you follow this document and can you perform this exercise today? Launching RDS and connecting to the RDS by using putty. Creating MySQL DB using AWS RDS. This is the procedure. And connecting to connect with the database, we need below details. Connecting with AWS RDS MySQL using EC2 instance. Using EC2 instance. These are the commands. These are the commands. This step is very important. Port number step. If you don't configure the port number correctly, then you cannot establish the connection. Once connected, these are the queries that we are going to execute to perform the operations. Can you guys try this before coming to tomorrow's session? Create the database, connect to the database, execute the queries. That's it. Tomorrow I will tell you how to connect with the database using Workbench, client software. Today we connected with EC2 now. Tomorrow I will tell you how to connect with Workbench software, another client software that we need to use to connect. What developers will use to perform their development activities, I will show you that. MySQL Workbench, how to connect with RDS by using MySQL Workbench. Right? That I will discuss in the tomorrow session. Guys, is this clear for you? Is this clear for you? How to work with RDS? Difficult or easy? Very simple, na? Very simple. 2 days for RDS, today and tomorrow. Tomorrow we will complete RDS. Fine, guys. I will upload these notes now. So please practice these notes. Please practice by following this document. Thank you. I will see you tomorrow. Bye-bye. Good night.